Terry, shall we get started?
Let's do this.
This is the two boxes that'll arrive via UPS at your house. So we're kind of excited about that. So we have all the frame component parts in here, and we have the carriage assembly in here. So I think what we need to do is maybe just kind of open up the boxes, show everybody what's inside, and so let's get started.
Let's do this.
Okay. Okay, we've got the box open, Terry. Took a little work getting those staples out, didn't it?
Yeah, there's one or two in here.
Well, what we've done is we've opened up the larger box and laid out all the parts out on the floor so that we can actually identify all the particular parts. So we're just kind of giving you a view of what all the different parts look like that come out of the box. And again, all these are on the instruction sheet. But this, to me, we find this to be the easiest thing of laying all the parts out so you can actually see. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up the longer box where the carriage is and the template boards. So we're going to start opening that at this point. What we're showing here is what the carriage and the template boards are all together, but you'll notice we have it nicely shrink wrapped. So we want to go ahead and cut into the pieces. We're going to just turn around so you can kind of see the back side of where the protection is. UPS is how we ship all the products, but we try to protect all the rollers and the carriage on the inside. But when we open it up, we need to be very careful that we do not cut into the cables that are in the carriage itself. So when we cut it, you can just use a pair of scissors or any type of little razor blade and just cut the plastic around. And what we can do is we can just peel that off. You'll notice as we take the cardboard off, this is the cable we're talking about, and this cable here is very important. This is part of the encoders for our stitch regulator. So as we cut the plastic out, we want to make sure that we don't cut into that. We actually have shipping spacers, you'll notice, and what we're doing is we're protecting our encoder and we're protecting our roller bearings that go on the rails, and that's actually what the whole mechanism is rolling the sewing machine back and forth. So we're going to go ahead and take these off, and you'll notice that on the bottom side we actually have spacers in between there to protect our top carriage. So this here is our bottom carriage, and this here is our top carriage. You'll also notice that we actually have a top piece that's actually going to go on the top carriage. Now you can see we've actually got both boxes where all the component parts are out, and we've laid them out on the floor. And so now we can visualize everything that we're going to start assembling. We find that if you lay everything out, it makes it really easy to start assembling. And then so basically we have our instruction manual that we're just going to basically go right to, and with our manual we'll be able to start right from point. So again, we have everything laid out. What we would like to show you, however, is all of the hardware. The hardware is all shrink wrapped, and we've had some questions regarding why we're missing all these component parts inside this part of where all of the hardware's at. What we're doing is we're pre-assembling your carriage. So if you notice that on our carriage, we have all of the pipes and the bolts already registered on that. So we've already taken that out, so we've saved you a little bit of time by already pre-assembling the carriage. So this card has a lot of our bolts, and again, there's going to be a lot of bolts and washers that we are not going to use because there's some extras on here for a different project. And then we also have inside the box here several bolts and whatnot for the carriage. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the pages, and so you can actually see what we're doing.
On your hardware card, it will tell you step 1 on page 5, step 2, step 3, step 4, and if you follow all the steps with the hardware and don't mix it up, it makes it very easy to grab the right parts.
This is the middle leg, which shows on the manual. This is the middle leg T-bracket. And what we've done is we've taken these two bolts and we've put them through. The most important thing that I think is that you need to know when you're assembling this, that these are the 75 millimeter carriage bolts that we've done. And that comes in the accessory bag that comes in the box that you have. So make sure that we're using the 75 millimeter long that comes in the plastic bag. This is not on the card. This is a little bit confusing because this is something extra that we've done in the Tin Lizzie 18 frame. So again, these are 75 millimeter carriage bolts going into the middle leg and the middle leg T-bracket. This is the wrench that is supplied on the card, and you'll notice we'll just go ahead and take the opened end wrench that says 13 on it, and we'll just go ahead and start turning the jam nut and turning it until it completely locks. And what we're looking for is we want to draw that carriage bolt all the way into the wood. You'll notice as we start turning it, it is going to be all the way locked in. So I'm going to continue to turn until it is nice and flush with the wood, and now we know it's nice and tight. Now this is the second middle leg and the middle leg T-bracket. We have two of these to put together, so that's the first thing that we do in assembling the Tin Lizzie 18 frame. Now all I'm doing is locking this jam nut all the way together. Again, until it is all the way flush with the wood. And now both of our middle leg and the middle T-bracket is assembled. Okay, what we've got now is the middle leg brace. And so with the middle leg brace, we're going to go ahead and attach it to our two middle legs itself. But first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and take our square nut. What we're going to do is we're going to take the square nut and put the square nut right into where the slot is at and just push it in on both ends. And that acts as a holder for that nut to put it in place as we go ahead and put the middle leg brace to our middle leg. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and take this particular part, and it's just going to line up to the drill hole that's on this area. We're going to go ahead and take our 60 millimeter connector bolt, and what we're going to do is go ahead and just put it right through the hole. And at this point we can just go ahead and take that at this to where it lines in with the square nut, and then I just go ahead and just finger tighten it to get it going. And once that's in position, then I can go ahead and take the Allen wrench, which is supplied on the card, and go ahead and put it, and then I just go ahead and just finger tighten to where it's in place, and now we have the brace to the one side. We can go ahead and take the other one, and we're going to go ahead and get our other 60 millimeter bolt, slide it through the hole, go ahead and line it into the jam nut, square nut, and go ahead and just finger tighten. And then you go ahead and take the Allen screw and finger tighten. Now what's nice about as we tighten this 60 millimeter connector bolt to where the square nut is at, they actually have it routed out, so it holds it in place. As you're tightening this, it actually locks it in to where you don't have to put a wrench on this part because it actually will take it. So now what I do at this point is I just go ahead and put the Allen wrench at sideways, and then I can put more torque on the screw, and then I just tighten it to where it's going to be nice and tight on the one side. I go ahead and flip it over to the other side, and at this point I am nice and tight. Now we are completely finished with page number 5, so we're going to go ahead and go to the next page and see where we're going to be at. This page is actually showing us how to put the bottom clamp for our leveling onto our adjustable legs. So we're going to go ahead and do that on all 6 of our legs at this point. So we're going to go ahead and attach those. So here's one of our legs. So Terry's going to go ahead and open up the bag that has the saddles on, and the saddles just slide right over the top where the screw is at. So we line up the hole, and then we just find the Phillips screws that are going to do that. And what we do now is go ahead and just start the screw where it's pre-drilled. We go ahead and tighten those up. So at this point I am going ahead and putting the 4th screw in the hole, and you now notice that I've put all 4 screws to hold that in place. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and assemble each one of the plates with the screws all the way through, and then that part will be done. Okay, here we have the leveling foot labeled on the bag, and so what we're going to do is put the leveling foot on the bottom of the saddle, and this is where we have the adjustment that's going to allow us to level the whole frame at 6 different points if we have the frame set up at 10 foot, or if we're going to set it up at 5 or 6 foot, we're only going to need 4 of these adjustment legs, but that's how we can adjust it back and forth. So we are going to go ahead and put these together, and this will be done. What we're doing now is we're just putting the finishing touches on the leveling foot. And at this point we have all of the saddles and the leveling foot put on all 6 feet. Now one thing we probably ought to address at this point is we're going to continue onto page 6, putting the actual adjusting foot on the middle leg part, which is going to just put into this area. What I have found to be true is that if we're going to only set the frame up at 5 or 6 feet, we do not need this particular part of the frame, because it's only for a support when we set it up at 8 or 10 feet. So if you plan on setting it up at 5 feet, this is probably not needed. But now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get one of the larger washers off of the card. And with the larger washer, what we do is we put that on the outside. And you'll notice that on the adjustable leg we have all these different points that can be made to wherever you want to put that. So this would be the highest level, and depending on the size that you would like to put the frame at, you can go ahead and lock these things down. And what we're going to do is turn it over on the opposite side, grab another adjuster leg, put that in position, 2 washers down. Now these washers that we're looking at here are what they call the fender washer, and that is the big washer that's in there. So at this point we've gone ahead and put the adjustable legs on, and we're done with page number 6. So let's move to page 7. On page 7 you'll notice that it's looking that we're going to get a table brace and one of the jaws on the side, and that's going to be attached on the top of the middle leg brace. If we want to just go ahead and just show this, what we've done now is we've gone ahead and got the 2 60mm connector bolt, the square nut, and the 2 jaws, and we've gone ahead and gotten the table brace. Again, we're going to go ahead and put the square nut into the piece of wood where it receives it nice and easy. At this point we're going to go ahead and put the 60mm connecting bolt through that. It's going to go through the piece of wood that's at the end here, and this is just going to come in to where it lines in to where the connector, the square nut is at. And again, you just go ahead and just tighten this up. And this is just kind of just be a finger tight. On this one, we'll just go ahead and line it in where the cut is at on the inside. We have the connector bolt going through the jaw. We're actually putting it through this part here, and then we just line it in to where the square nut is at, and we just go ahead and just lock it in place. What we have here is we have the 4 angle or conduit braces. One end of the where the receiver goes, we're actually going to put a square nut. The other end we're going to use the 30mm connector bolt, and we're actually going to use the cap nut. And what we do is we're going to go ahead and take this particular unit. The brace is going to go on the outside here, and this is where the connector bolt is going to go through this particular thing and through the middle leg bracket. And then we're going to take the cap nut, and the cap nut goes on the inside, and you'll notice it just fits right on the inside here. And then we go ahead and finger tighten the 30mm connector bolt into the cap nut. And you'll notice we need to put 4 of these on. We're going to go ahead and put the one in this position. We're going to put the one over here. We've taken the connector bolt on the other. We're putting the cap on the inside, and we line it up. And again, I finger tighten the 30mm connector bolt to the conduit brace. Now we've got 2 of them together. I'm going to go ahead and turn this around. And now we're going to do the other side. This is the 3rd brace. I've gone ahead and put the connector bolt in. I have my end cap that's going to go on the inside, and I line these up. And again, I finger tighten the screw. This is where we have the 2 Allen wrenches that are on your card, and I'll go ahead and take the 1 Allen wrench and put it on the outside where the connector bolt is, and I'll put the Allen wrench on the inside, and then I go ahead and tighten these screws so they're nice and tight. On the 4th leg, and I've just about got all of my angle brackets for the conduit pipe all assembled. They're nice and tight. We have now finished page number 7. So let's turn the page and see what the next step is. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and put the table brace and the clamp on the outside. So we need 2 more table braces. Here are our table braces. Okay, so now we've gotten the table brace. We're going to go ahead and put our square nut in where the table brace is at. This is going to require 1 on each side. Now this is kind of an important part. When we put this together, we want to make sure that the table brace and the table brace match. If we put it in this like this would then be backwards because it doesn't line up where we put the template board. So when we're assembling this part, make sure that we put the table brace equal to both ends. So now we're going to find our 60mm bolt. Okay, we now have our 2 60mm connector bolt and our jaw, or the conduit clamp. The conduit clamp, you take the bolt through, and it's going to come through on the outside here. And then all we need to do is line it up with the nut on the inside. And again, we're just going to go ahead and tighten that up. Finger tighten will be plenty to hold it in place. And then what we do is a 60mm bolt on the other clamp, and find the outside one here. And again, just finger tight will be plenty, and we can just leave that sitting at this point. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're going to go ahead and turn the whole unit around. And you'll notice again what we want to do is we want to take our clamp, our table brace, and put it in the same way. We want to make sure that the wider end matches our wider end here. And we want to make sure that we put our square nut in the end piece here. We've just kind of put our last 60mm bolt onto our table brace and finger tightened it. And as you can see now, what we have is we have the whole center leg support assembly all together. Again, making sure that the 3 template board brackets are all matching. And this is done and ready to go. We can go ahead and put this aside. What we're showing here is the side panels. This is the right side panel, and it actually is engraved on the side. So we're going to start on that first, but we're going to go ahead and put the bolts into the different parts of the side panel. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start where we've actually laid out our bolts. We have the 75mm carriage bolts that will be going on the bottom part, and we have the 50mm carriage bolts that will be going up in the upper area here. And so as we look at the picture in the that we've showed you, we're going to bring the bolts right on through. But what we want to do, this is the inside part of the frame, and where it says Tin Lizzie 18, where it has been embossed, that would be the outside of the frame. So what I like doing is I hold the frame such as this, and the carriage bolt will go from the inside to the outside, and then we take a washer, and then I go ahead and take the jam nut and put it in. What I do is I just screw this all the way in, and then again what I do is I go ahead and take the 13 wrench, and I just go ahead and take, just like when we were doing the adjustable legs, I take that and lock it in to where the carriage bolt is nice and flush with the wood, so it's nice and tight. So then I can go ahead and put the 50mm bolt right on through, take the washer, the jam nut, go all the way through using the 13mm and locking it in place. Nice and tight again, making sure that we're nice and flush, that the square hex that's underneath the bolt is nice and flush with the frame. Again, remember the bolts are facing from the inside to the outside. So now we're going to go ahead and put the other two bolts that are at this end right down here exactly the same way. So we have now put the finishing touches on all four bolts, so we've got them all in position at this point. And go ahead and put it from the back side or the inside part of the side frame, putting the flat washer on, and the jam nut goes on the bolt. Slide that in position, taking the 13mm again and going all the way around. And again, we want to do the same thing, nice and tight, and we want to just show you again where it's nice and flush on the inside of the frame to where that locks into position. Now we're going to go ahead and put the bolts on all four positions. Now we've just gone ahead and put the final touches on locking this jam nut on. So now we've got all four bolts of the 75mm on the bottom part. So as you can see, we now have on the panel all of our bolts set up. Now this again is the right side of our frame. Now we have another panel that is the opposite side, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. So all you need to do is just repeat the same procedure on the next panel. Now that we've just about got all the bolts tied together, I'm finishing the last one on the last side panel. This is the left one. And you'll notice now that all the bolts are put in, and again, just as a refresher, they're nice and flush, nice and tight. And this is the left side of the panel. But all of our bolts are in at this point. And remember, all the bolts are facing toward the outside. When you're putting it in, it's always facing to where it has the silk screen of the Tin Lizzie 18. Okay, at this point we're going to go ahead and put the adjustable legs on, and they're going to go where the 75mm bolt is. And again, that just slides in position. And at that point, all we're going to do is get our two fender washers. Again, the two fender washers are the big fat ones. We're just going to put those on, and we can go ahead and take the locking knob and screw that in position. And all we're going to do now is we can adjust it to whatever height that we want. Again, moving it up and down to the different size. Now we'll go ahead and put all four legs on both the panels. So we've finished up the first panel, which was the left side. Now we're just completing our legs on the right panel. So now we have all four legs attached where we're showing the two legs on the right panel, and we are ready to go. So now all we're going to do is go ahead and turn the frame to the opposite side, and we are going to go ahead and put our right side fabric holder that's in the front and the middle fabric holder, but you'll notice that they are marked with the R's, which will go with the right side frame. And so on this particular part, it's going to be facing on the outside, and it goes right into the panel here. Again, we're going to get our lock washers or our fender washers and the locking knob here. So there is our fender washer, the locking knob, and the locking knob. We'll go ahead and take this particular one, the center one for the center bar, put our fender washers on, and our right side panel is now finished with the legs put on, the holder for the fabric for the front adjuster, and then the one that is for the center adjuster. Now all we're going to do is do exactly the same on the other side. Remember that the letters will be matching, R for right. So we're going to go ahead and put those on the left side. As you see, we have put the locking knobs and the fender washers, and now as we turn it around again, we have matched the left to the left so that they all match together. So we basically have finished that particular part, and now we're able to go ahead and go to the next page. So now we're going to go ahead and put our conduit brace in position. So we've got all four of those with us. We're going to put the conduit clamps on, and we're going to put the table brace on at the same time. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put the brace in. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and attach this brace to the bracket on the inside. One thing we probably ought to note here is you're going to notice we have the little dado cut, and where the jam nut is going to be, or the square nut is going to go in this position. You can put it to where the actual thing is facing out, but we want the dado cut to where it's facing on the inside. This is the outside of the frame. We want it to face on the inside, so the notch is going to be on the inside. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put the square nut in position. We will take the 50mm bolt, come in from the back side, and it slides right in position. And then Terry's going to go ahead and finger tighten that up, and that just locks in position. Now what I like doing at this point is going ahead and taking the Allen screw wrench and going ahead and locking that right nice and tight at this point so that it's nice and flush. That way this thing won't wobble around at this point. So Terry's going ahead and locking that together. Actually, let's turn this around so you can kind of see what she's doing here. She's locking that together with the angle brace, and with that Allen wrench she's making it nice and tight. And so as we turn that around, you'll notice at this point it's nice and tight in position. So what we're going to do is we have 4 of these to put on. So we're going to go ahead and put the one that's on this position here, and then we will go ahead and bring the right frame and put the angle brace in place. Okay, so we're going to go ahead now and put the last leg on. You'll notice that we're just going ahead and put it in position. Terry's finger tightening it, and then she'll just use the Allen wrench to tighten it up. And at this point, all 4 of our braces will be in place, and this step will be done. So what we're doing now is we're going to go ahead and attach the table braces, and we did this way back in the beginning when we were doing our center support. Again, we're going to go ahead and put our square nuts in the little spots. One thing that's kind of important when we put the table brace in place, it's going to go on our angle supports here, but we want to make sure that we notice we have one longer cutout that's going to be facing toward the front. The front is where all of the pipes are going to be loaded, and the back is going to be on the short side here. So when we put this in, make sure you do not put it in backwards, otherwise you will have to turn it around. So what we're doing here is we're putting it in this position here. We have our clamps, the conduit clamp. We're using the 60mm bolt, and this is going to go through the end of the angle brace and through the part up on the top. You'll notice now we put the connector bolt all the way through the conduit clamp, the angle brace, and it is now attaching to the nut on the inside, and I'm just finger tightening this at this point so where it's in. And now what we'll do is we'll come around to the opposite side and grab the 60mm connector bolt and a conduit clamp in, and again we're going to come through, line it into the square nut, and again we're just going to finger tight, and those now are ready. And so we are basically finished on this part here, and we can go ahead and put this one aside, and now we can go ahead and do the left side panel itself. This is the left panel, and so we're going to do the same thing that we just did. We're just going to go ahead and put the brace in, but remember, we want to be careful that we put it in the right way. Remember, the fatter part is going to be facing to where it's up into this area here, and then we also want to put the square nut in position, square nut in position, and it's going to go in here. And then we're going to take the 60mm bolt, go through, and again we're just going to finger tighten the other one, and we're going to come around to the opposite side. And we now have finger tight, this one is complete. At this point we've gotten our supports all complete on our left side and our right side, and we are basically done on the left side and the right side panel. We're at the point now of going ahead and putting the accessory pieces on the end of the conduit pipes. We have all the accessory items laid out, and these are the component parts that are going to go inside the conduit pipes. This is the part that's going to actually hold the bolt, and this is going to be the piece that's going to go on the outside. But we'd like to go ahead and show you how to assemble these. So we're going to take 3 of the conduit wedges, and we'll just take the 3 and you just go ahead and just attach them together. The little wing goes right onto the inside, and they just kind of just squeeze together, and then we've made our little sandwich type thing that's going to go into the end of the pipe. So we'll just set that aside for a second. We're going to take one of the 30mm hex bolts, and we're going to put it on the end of the conduit wedge, and that's going to just slide in position like that. And so now our bolt is gone through the conduit wedge. At that point we're going to come back to our wedge and put it inside to where now the bolt is actually on the opposite side. This is where the fender washer, the 3/8 fender washer, is going to come on the outside of this. And then we're going to take the conduit cone and put the conduit cone on the outside and screw that in. And I just screw it just a little bit so it's nice and loose, and then I would take the fender washer and slide it out. And then what we do is we take this particular part, and it's going to go at the end of the pipe, and we're just going to kind of just leave that and just put a little bit of screw on that. We'll just leave it sitting at that point. So we have to assemble 4 of these pieces. Terry already has an extra one set up. We'll go ahead and put that on. So now we'll go ahead and do 2 more that we'll actually put on the opposite end of this pipe. Now what we're doing is we're going ahead and putting the last one on the end of the pipe. So now we have all 4 of our wedges put into the end of the conduit pipe. Now these 2 conduit pipes that you see here are the ones that are actually going to hold the frame together. So we are actually ready to put the frame and the conduit pipes together. So now we have the conduit pipe, and again, these are the two that we're going to use for the machine that's going to hold the carriage together. So we have our wedges in place. You'll notice that we have the washer on the outside, and that washer is going to go right over the little slot that's in this point here. And it does not matter if we put the pipe on the front end first or the back end first. It does not matter. But all we're going to do is have Terry lean the table over just a little bit, and we're just going to slide that in position here. And I'm going to have to loosen the screw just a little bit, and that washer is just going to go right over the top, and it's just going to slide right down in position like this. So as you can see, we've got the washer and the conduit pipe in, and the wedges are on the inside, and we're on the inside at this point. And then as you notice, we have our angle brace that's over here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to loosen this just a little bit, the screw on the outside, so that we can actually take the conduit clamp, and it's going to fit, and it's just going to come over the top of that, and then we can go ahead and put this in position. And again, I'm just going to kind of finger tighten. As we're tightening the screw on the outside for the conduit clamp, we just want to make sure that the table brace on the inside is going into what we call the dado cut, so that it's nice and formatting here. And then we can go ahead and just slowly tighten. But again, we're just going to have this finger tighten so that we can actually move the pipe around as we're going. So finger tight is fine at this point. So now we've gone ahead and gotten the front pipe in place. We're now going to go ahead and grab the second conduit, and we're going to do the same thing. We make sure that we have the washer, and the washer is going to go right over the top of the cut, and it's just going to slide in position, and it drops down, and then all we need to do is loosen our piece here, line it up, and then we're going to finger tighten that screw. Use the Allen wrench on the outside to kind of just finger tighten. Again, we don't want it very tight, we just want it tight enough to where it just kind of holds it in place. We're not going to tighten these screws at the end until we get the frame assembly. What we've just worked on is the left side. Now we're going to go ahead and put the right side together. We'll just slide this in position. And again, here is our washer, and we're going to just slide the washer right over the top and drop it right down into the slot. Terry's going to go ahead and do hers on her side, and it's in position. And now we've kind of locked up. We've got our locking jaw, and if it's a little bit too tight, we'll just kind of finger loosen the screw so that it'll turn around, and that just kind of comes in position, and then I'll finger tighten that. Again, remembering to make sure that this angle brace is getting into where the dado cut is on the inside. You'll notice that it's nice and flush on the inside, and again, we're just kind of just finger tightening to where those parts are in, and Terry's coming around and tightening the Allen screws. Again, just finger tight so that we can still kind of just gently turn the pipes. This is now where we're going to be using the secondary wrench. The Allen wrench has a little bigger size because on this one, on the end of the pipe, it is actually a thicker screw. So she's going to turn on the angle, and now she's going to go ahead and lock that in position. We want to make sure that when we're using the wedges, that the wedges are nice and flush. What we mean by that is that if we loosen that up, this is an incorrect fitting where the wedge is actually protruding out. We want to make sure that that wedge is stuffed inside. So what I'm going to do is push that wedge all the way in so it's nice and flush. And then at that point, we will actually have Terry go ahead and tighten up the screw with the larger Allen wrench. And she will tighten with her strength. And then what we'll do is we'll come back now and we'll do the opposite side, and we'll do exactly the same thing. This is now the last screw that I'm just tightening up on the right side of the frame, and it's nice and tight. And we've gone ahead and we've locked in all of the side pieces on the side clamps now, and so our frame is nice and sturdy. So now you can kind of see an overview of what we've done with the frame towards left side and right side. The only thing we haven't put in now is the center brace, and that's what we're going to go ahead and do at this point. what we're showing now is we want to go ahead and on the center bar, we want to go ahead and find center location. So we're going to take our tape measure and we're going to go from the end of the pipes and we're going to measure out, because we've set this up at 10 foot, we're going to measure out 60 inches and we're going to mark 60 inches on our pipe. And the reason we're doing this is, again, so that we can know exactly where center is for our center brace. So we'll do that on the front one, and then Terry's holding it on the opposite end, and then we are in this position here. So now we know exactly where center is on our pipes. This is our center bracket, and one thing we want to make sure about is when we put this into the underneath the carriage, again, we have our longer piece for our board here, so this piece is actually going to go forward. So we want to make sure that it matches. Again, here is our pieces here, so they have to match here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and put it right underneath the table. Terry's lifting up on that one end, and this is going to slide in position. Okay, and she's going to lower it down. And this is exactly why we marked our pipes, because our marking that's right here is going to be centered to this point right here. Okay, you're good. And so what we're going to do now is we'll take this and we'll just take our conduit pipe, and it's a little bit tight, so I'm going to back off the screw. All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to take the conduit clamp, and again, what we'll do is we have our mark, we're going to line that up, and then Terry's going to go ahead and finger tighten that one in position. And then I'll go ahead on the opposite side. We want to make sure that we have the same position over here. We're going to lock it in. I'm finger tightening the bolt. And again, we just want to make sure that we're in center on this position here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and take the Allen wrench and we're going to go ahead and lock this in position. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and lock this one in position. So it's going to be nice and tight. Now while she's locking that, we want to make sure that the conduit clamp is nice and flush around the pipe as it's nice and tight now as she's locked that in. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Allen screw on the opposite side, make sure that I'm centered in my pipe here, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn and I'll lock that in position. And now our cross beam is definitely in center position. Now we can kind of come back and we can tie these together, and then we can come over and we can tie the opposite end, doing exactly what we did here, locking these together. What we're doing now is we're just putting the finishing touches on the center bracket, locking those screws in, and Terry's going to lock that one in on that side. And again, we just want to make sure that that conduit clamp is nice and flush all the way around the pipe, and she's locked those in, and we now have a frame that is all together with all the component parts basically. We are now set out the gears, so we actually have the 3 gears, we have the 3 little wood pieces, and then we have the little locking nuts in this part here. We're going to also use the 70mm bolt. So the 70mm bolt is going to be used also in this particular part. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to put these into the 4 fabric rails, and so these are going to be attaching onto this area here. This is the 3 for the fabric, and this one is the one that's going to go through the sewing machine. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to go ahead and mount one together and show you how this is going to be. We're going to take the 70mm bolt and put it into our cone piece. We're going to take our 3 wedges again, and we're going to go ahead and put those together like we had done earlier when we put the 2 clamps together for the whole frame assembly. And that piece just goes in here, and now we have the bolt in. And we're going to go ahead and take our wood ratchet piece, and notice that it actually has what we call a routed piece on the inside. That is actually going to be facing down. So don't put it in like this, it is actually going to be facing down. We're going to go ahead and take one of the jam nuts, and jam nut's going to go on the end. And I just go ahead and kind of finger tighten that, and at that point it's actually going to go at the end and it slides in. And then at this point we're going to go ahead and grab our 13mm wrench, and we go ahead and tighten this around. And as we're doing that, what that's doing is pulling the bolt out and it's expanding the flange on the inside so that this whole thing does not come out. So we want to make this nice and tight. So at that point we are in position, and we can go ahead and put our ratchet gear over the top, and we could, at this point, we could go ahead and just put this in, but I'm just going to go ahead and set this down on the frame, and we're going to go to the opposite side to show you how to put the opposite piece in. We have our conduit spacer, and you'll notice it's open on the inside and it's flat on the other side. What we want to do is we do not want to put it to where it's open on the inside where it covers the wedge. We actually want it facing on the outside to where the flush end comes into the flush end here, and then we will go ahead and take the jam nut and screw the jam nut all the way in, and again it's going to be finger tight up against this, and then we go ahead and take the wedge, slide it in, and then we come back and we're going to go ahead and tighten the screw or the nut all the way, and again we're going to go ahead and tighten it to where it's nice and tight. And now we've got it. So now we have the one on the one end, and then we have the gear on the opposite end. This is now ready to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and put the fender washer over the bolt, and then we can go ahead now and put the black knob on, and just a few threads on that will be fine. And then at this point we'll go to the other side, and we're going to put the fender washer on and the black bolt. And then this, what we want to do is at this point the fender washer is on the outside, and it's just going to face in to where it's over, and it just sets in position. Now what we're going to do at this point is we have 4 of these to do, but we're only going to do 3 with this particular setup on this. One of the pipes will not have that. We've just completed the extra 2 rails that have the gears on them, so we're just going to go ahead and put that on the top one, making sure that the locking washer or the fender washer and the bar is on the outside. And then we're going to take the third one, and actually what we need to do is put the bottom one on first, and then we can go ahead and put the top one in place. Now what we're going to do at this point is we're going to take the ratchet and the 3 screws that come in the little white box, and we're now going to go ahead and attach the screw to the gear. And this is where you find out if you put the gear on backwards or straight or wrong. So in this particular instance we put the gear on upside down. You notice how the gear is not falling in place here. So we're going to have to turn this gear around. So we're just going to kind of finger tighten this. We're going to take the one that's up on the top, and we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. The thread goes through, and let's go into the insert part. And you'll notice now that this one is correct. The gear falls into the teeth, so the ratchet just goes right into that. And then we're going to take the one that's up on the front, and this one's going to lock into here. And so we actually got both of these gears upside down. So that'll be something that we can repair really easy. We'll just go ahead and lift this up and lift this up, and we'll just go ahead and take this out and just turn the gear around. We'll do the same thing with this one. And then again we'll just turn the gear around, put it onto the block, put the one in first, the top second, and then you'll notice that now they lock right in comfortably, and it matches here. And now we've put the ratchet in. One thing we recommend that when you're tightening these is basically finger tight is tight. You don't need to go any tighter on this screw going into the wood piece, and that's it. The table end brace, it actually is going to be holding up our template boards, and these are reversible. There's no right or wrong, and all that's going to do, it's going to attach in this position right here. Terry's going to hold that. I'm going to use the 30mm end cap screw and the end cap connector, and it's just going to go, the screw's going to go from the outside. So we're going to be doing both of those. This goes right on the end. and then the end cap screw goes right in through there, and then again we're just going to finger tighten, and we're going to finger tighten here, and then okay, that's it. We're going to take the Allen wrenches and hold the one on the inside and the Allen wrench on the outside, and we can go ahead and tighten those up. And they are locked in. The others, and we now have less locked up, and that's actually going to be the brace that will hold our template board as we're going. These are the template boards. We have the little template boards that are going to go on the ends, and you'll notice on the template board we have the dado cut where the bolts are going to be going through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the one small one and start it at the end. Now the square nut is now in place, and what we'd want to do is go ahead and put all the square nuts in the different locations where the screws will be lined up. So at this point you can just take the connector bolt, and all you need to do is just kind of screw that down, and that's what's going to hold the template boards in place, and you can go ahead and put them all the way through the whole system. Now if you prefer, these are not necessary. This is an option. I know a lot of times when we do the template board sewing, we just lay them in here. But if you want it securely fastened, you're just going to go ahead and put these all down, and the whole board will be done. Okay, my two long ones. And so this just kind of puts in like a puzzle board. This one's going to go in position here. This one is going to go in position here. So we put the two long ones in. And then what I do is I take, making sure again our dado cut is up. It's going to slide in position here. And then I just kind of lift up and do it like a drawbridge. And once they're in place, they just drop in. And we are set. This is the top part of our carriage. And you'll notice that we have our encoder. We want to make sure that when we put the encoder and the top carriage on the bottom carriage that we're holding this in place, and that the rails and the V-groove right here are going to line in, and it goes in position. So if we turn it around, you will notice that the encoder here is laying flush. But it has a possibility of being bent, and we don't want it to be like this. We actually want that encoder laying flat into this position here. This is the back end of the carriage. That's going to be toward the back side of the frame. So all we need to do again is we're going to make sure that we have our encoder on the bottom side. It needs to be flush there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take the encoder to where it's laying flat, and we're going to go ahead and mount the V-groove rollers to where they're on, and that our encoder is in this position here, and then we have our cable that's coming out to the back side, and now we have our roller top and roller bottom to where it now all works perfectly. And now we're ready to go ahead and put the sewing machine on the carriage. We showed earlier the black mat when we were disassembling, taking the carriage out of the box. The black mat just sits on top of that, and that's going to keep the sewing machine from sliding off the carriage. So we just leave it right in here to where it's equal amounts front and back. And do now, what we're doing is we found the little Phillips screwdrivers on the selection card. But first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and take our T-nuts. What'd you call these?
Square nut.
Square nut. Where we're going to
No, be right red.
Oh, see, we've just tightened these up. Whoops, we just noticed that we put them on the wrong side.
Oh,
way to go, Terry.
Oh, crap.